students, today's agenda is graphing monomials and we'll be working on 7.1. Today students will be able to review graphing monomials and they will be able to identify the end behavior. The entire unit will be about graphing higher. The entire unit is about graphing higher. Can't do the intro. This whole unit will be about graphing higher degree polynomials and understanding the end behavior depending on the degree and the leading coefficient. And so it says that the value of y will be equals to whatever the value of x is. So for the first one, if we have y equals, instead of x, we substitute with the value that we have here. So we say, oh, y is equals to 2. For the next one, if x is 1, we'll replace it in there, and that means that y will be equals to 1. If x is 0, we'll take away the x, and in its place put 0, so y equals 0. Same for the next one. To find the value of y, when x is -1, we say, oh, just substitute, take away the x and put its value in its place, and it's -1. So basically when we have y equals x, all you're doing is just putting the same value on both x and y. Okay, so 0, 0 is right here. And you can start at any point actually. You can start at 2, 2 is right there. 1, 1, 1, 1 is right there. 0, 0, -1, -1. And -2, -2. We graph it, and that's our line. So notice how this is positive, okay? The leading coefficient is positive. We are going to start analyzing that. And if you notice, the end behaviors, it's going down on the left and going up on the right. And we're just going to leave it like that. I know that they're just a line, but have that in mind. On the left, it goes down. On the right, it goes up. But don't forget that the exponent or degree in this case is 1, which means that it's odd, okay? So odd degree, positive leading coefficient, and what is it doing? Going down on the left, up on the right, okay? For the next one, it says y will be the negative of x. So if x is positive 2, we substitute, bring down the negative, substitute x with the 2 that we have here. So just make sure that you bring the negative down first, okay? And then substitute the x and put that value in its place. So y will be -2. For this one, again, you put y equals the negative of whatever we have for x. X is 1, so y will be equals -1. So what's happening? You're just, when it's negative x, you just switch the sign. And for 0, 0 is always neutral, so -0 will be 0. It's not positive, it's not negative, so just 0. For -1, notice how in here we're going to have the negative from here, okay, negative, bring it down, and then we have -1 for the value of x. And and negative make the big plus, okay? I make it so big that the negatives disappear so I don't get confused, and it's +1. And the same thing, negative from here and negative from the number or value for x, negative and negative becomes +2. So now that we have our values, we can start graphing 2, -2, 2, -2, 1, -1, 1, -1. I'm going to go a little faster. 0, 0, -1, 1, -1, +1, and -2, +2. Okay. Okay, so again, analyzing, this has degree 1 and it's odd. Okay, have that in mind. And the leading coefficient is negative. So negative for the leading coefficient. Notice how on the left, the arrow is going up. On the right, it's going down. Okay, so this is on the left. It's pointing up. And on the right, it's pointing down. Okay, so those three things are important. For the next one, you recognize that y equals x squared. It's a parabola. Let's start with this value. So 2, it means y equals x is 2 squared. So y will be equals to 2 squared is 4. For the next one, y equals x squared. The value of x is 1 squared, which is equals to 1. For the next one, y is equals to 0. You're just substituting the value of x. So y equals 0 squared. 0 squared is just 0. For the negatives, y equals, no, because it's negative, we're going to put it between parentheses. Okay, and negative 1 squared. Negative 1 times negative 1 will always be positive 1. For the next one, y is equals to x squared. The value of x is negative 2 squared. And negative 2 times negative 2 will be positive 4. Notice how this is an even. And even if it's a negative value for x, it becomes positive because negative times negative. This means negative 2 times negative 2. Okay, so we have to be careful about that. Negative times negative becomes positive. Now we start graphing our values. So 2, 4, 2, 4 is right there. 1, 1 is right there. 0, 0, right at the origin. Negative 1, positive 1. And negative 2, positive 4. And if you were to continue, it will be 3 squared will be positive 9. And negative 3 times negative 3 will be also positive 9. Okay, we graph our parabola perfectly on the dots. And now let's analyze it. So the degree is 2, which is even. Even degree. The leading coefficient is positive. And what's happening when it's even and positive? Well, on the left it's going up, and on the right it's also going up. Okay, so left and right, both are going up. And the next one is y equals negative x squared. If I have positive 2, again, y is equals to, make sure you bring down that negative from the equation. Replace the 2 square. Now in here, it doesn't mean negative 2 times negative 2 because we're just bringing this down, and this is what we're raising to the second power, only the value of x. So this will be done first. So bring down the negative, and then 2 squared means 2 times 2 is 4. So it will be negative from the equation and then 4. For the next one, y is equals to negative from the equation, x is 1 squared. My phone wants to be on screen. Okay, negative from the equation, and the value of x is 1 squared. So y is equals to, again, bring down this negative first, and you're only raising 1 to the second power, which means 1, and so that's negative 1. For 0, 0, negative 0 squared is just negative 0, but we don't have a negative or positive 0. 0 is just neutral. It's always in the middle. And then for the next one, y is equals to negative. Because this is a negative for the value of x, we put it between parentheses, square that, and remember, we're always going to square that first. A lot of people will confuse it with negative times negative positive, or two negatives together make the big plus. No. Remember, multiplication comes after exponents in PEMDAS. So y is equals to, bring down the negative. Negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. So negative 1. For the next one, y is equals to, bring down the negative from the equation. Replace negative 2 in place of the x. That's squared. Remember that we're going to square it first. Exponent comes before multiplication, so bring down the negative. Negative 2 squared means negative 2 times negative 2, which is positive 4. But we have that negative because of this in the equation. So negative 4. So now we're able to graph, and so this will be 2, negative 4. 2, negative 4 is right there. 1, negative 1. 1, negative 1. 0, 0. Negative 1, negative 1. So negative 1, negative 1. And negative 2, negative 4. Negative 2, negative 4. Again, you can do more values, but those will be enough because we're just trying to find out the relationship between the negatives, the degree, and the end behavior. Okay. So what do we have here? We have a negative leading coefficient. We have an even degree. And what is the end behavior? It's going down. Both of them are going down on the left and on the right. Okay, we're going to compare it at the end, but just start looking. Odd, positive, starts down on the left, up on the right. Negative, odd, it's up on the left, down on the right. So it's backwards with this one, right? And because it's odd, one up and one down, but where does it start? With even, both are up if it's positive, the leading coefficient is positive, and both are down if you have a negative leading coefficient. So let's keep going. Okay, so if I substitute the 2 in here, it means 2 to the third power. It doesn't mean 2 times 3. It means 2 times 2 times 2, which is 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. 0 times 0 times 0 is 0. Negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. Times negative 1 is negative 1. So let me write that one down just to make sure. So y is equals to negative 1 cubed. But remember that this means negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1. 3 times. This is telling me how many times to multiply the base, including its sign. And so negative 1 times negative 1, this becomes positive. But then positive times negative becomes negative. That's why it ends up being negative. And 1 times 1 is 1. For the next one, y is equals to, also negative 1, sorry. Negative 2 cubed. Again, it means negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. And so negative times negative is positive. 2 times 2 is 4. Then I multiply this one times this one. And so positive times negative is negative. 4 times 2 is 8. So negative 8. Okay, so this is negative 8. So now I have the values 2, 8. 2, 8 is right there. 1, 1, 0, 0. Negative 1, negative 1, and negative 2, negative 8, negative 2, negative 8. And so my graph will go something like this. Okay. Beautiful. Okay, so that's my graph. Let's analyze it. So this is a positive leading coefficient. It has an odd degree. And notice how my graph is pointing down on the left and pointing up on the right. Okay? Left and right. Again, it's odd and one down, one up. When it's positive, it's down on the left. Okay? Have that in mind. For the next one, we're going to do the same thing. Let me do a couple of those. So bring down the negative from here. Then you have 2 cubed. Bring down the negative, and 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. So negative 8. Okay. For the next one, same thing. Bring down the negative. 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. With that negative, it's negative 1. Negative 0 times 0 times 0 is 0. And remember that it has that negative, but 0 is not negative or positive, so it's just neutral 0. Let me do this in here. So negative from the formula, negative 1 for x. Because it's negative, we're going to put it between parentheses, and that's cubed. We're going to raise this to the third power first. Bring down the negative times negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1. We already said that negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1 is negative 1. So bring that down. And now I'm able to multiply. Notice how I put the little dot in here to represent the multiplication so that we don't forget that we need to multiply those signs. And so negative times negative becomes positive 1. Okay, so y equals negative from the formula, negative 2 cubed, and bring down the negative from the formula. Negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. Multiply those signs, and we make the big plus. 2 negatives together make the big plus. And so it's positive 8. Okay, we're ready to graph. 2, negative 8. 2, negative 8 is right there. 1, negative 1. 0, 0. Negative 1, 1. Negative 1, 1. And negative 8. The last one is negative 2, 8. Negative 2, positive 8. So my graph will be something like that. Again, you can go back to make it smoother for those curves. And so analyzing, we have a negative leading coefficient. We have an odd degree. And what do we have for the end behavior? On the left, it goes to the positive infinite. On the right, it goes to the negative infinite. So up on the left, down on the right. Okay, for the next one, we have y equals x to the fourth power. And so we have 0 times, I'm going to start with the vertex, which is at 0, at the origin. 0 times 0 times 0 times 0 is 0. 0.5 times 0.5 times 0.5 times 0.5. And you can use your calculator if you wish. And in here, you can either use a calculator or you can use decimals. Because in here, we're just trying to figure out the end behavior and understanding it. So we're going to do 0.5. It's right here, 0.5. In this calculator, it has a little arrow that says power. And then you just put to the fourth power and press equal. That's the value for y, 0.0625. Okay, and you can run it to 0.06. Now I'm going to do this one at the bottom. Now remember that we put parentheses. When it's negative, we put y equals negative 0.5. Because we're substituting the value, including the negative for x, we put it between parentheses and to the fourth power. So when we're doing this in a calculator, we're going to open a parenthesis, put negative 0.5, close parentheses, because sometimes we don't use those parentheses, and that's when we get the a different answer. Raised to the fourth power, and again, is positive 0.0625. Okay, so positive 0.0625. Now, when we have 1 to the fourth power just means 1 times 1 times 1 times 1, which is 1. And then 2, it means 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16. Okay, the same here. Negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1, times negative 1 is negative 1, times negative 1 is positive 1. And the same thing is going to be here. Negative 2 times negative 2. Let me write it down. Negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. So these two negatives, negative times negative becomes positive. These two negative times negative becomes positive. And then you just, so you can multiply it in pairs. Negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. And also here, negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. And now, positive 4 times positive 4 is positive 16. So something that I want to share with this is we're going to start with 0, 0. But for this one is 0.5, 0.01. So it's very close right here. Almost nothing. Because you have to divide that by 10 pieces and get less than one of them. Okay? And then the next one is 1, 1. So 1, 1. 2, 16, 2, 16 will be, this is 10, so somewhere in there. Then for this one, 5, right there, very close, less than 1/10 of that. And then 1, 1, negative 1, positive 1, and negative 2, positive 16, somewhere up there. So that will be my graph, my sketch. And let's analyze it. This is a positive leading coefficient. This is even. And both of them are going up. So up on the left and up on the right. I hope that you're seeing a pattern here. If it's uneven, both are pointing on the same direction. If it's positive, they both go up. If it's negative, they will both go down. Okay, with even, both to the same. So positive, negative, both go down if it's negative. Okay, negative coefficient, both go down if it's even. So in here, we can assume that on the left and on the right, both are going to go down. So the even makes it both going on the same direction. The negative makes it go down. On previous lessons, I showed you that I use a free, and it's not a commercial, but it's free online. You can download the application or you can just use it online. So it's desmos.com. And you go on the graphing calculator and you put y equals, can you see? So y equals, and then x. For the power, you just use a to the v power and put the 4. And so this is what I wanted you to see. I tried to include a decimal, but I was not very successful. So notice how in here for this one, let me include also the y equals x squared so that you can see the difference. Y equals x, and for the square, all you do is put the a to the second power right there. So notice how for when we raise to the fourth power, it opens a lot slower at first. Because you're multiplying decimals with times decimals times decimal, usually your number will be smaller than what you're multiplying, okay? But with this one, it grows a little faster in the decimals, okay? But then, which one grows faster? After 1, 1 and negative 1, 1, the red, which is y equals x to the fourth, grows faster. Look at that. Beautiful. Okay, enough. I can play with this all day long. Okay, so for this one, we're going to do the same thing, but remember that we carry the negative from the formula, and so 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, 16. Okay, because we're just raising, and I should have written in here, y is equals to bring down the negative, the value of x is 2 to the fourth power is just for the 2, and that's why we multiply 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is 16, and bring down the negative, and so that's why it's negative 16. For the next one, y is equals to negative from the formula, 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 will be 1, and so this will be negative 1. 0.5. So for this one, we're just bringing down the negative, and 0.5 to the fourth power. We already know that it's this number, right? Negative 0.5 times 0.5 times 0.5 times 0.5 will give us this number. The reason for which this will end up negative is because of this negative outside. Okay, so 0.0625. Okay, negative because of that negative. 0.0625. 0 will be 0. And then in here, this is where we might get a little confused. Why doesn't that become... Okay, so negative from here. Then between parentheses, we're going to have negative 0.5 to the fourth power. Well, you already saw that negative 0.5 to the fourth power in the calculator gives us this, even if it's negative. The reason is because 4 negatives cancel to positives, right? I'll do it with a different calculator so you can see in case you have another one, a different one. So we'll put the parentheses, negative 0.5. Notice how in here we had to put the negative afterwards. And negative is not the minus, it's this negative right here. We close the parentheses and we raise to the fourth power. See, it became positive. Okay, positive for this part is positive 0.625, but we bring down the negative from outside. Okay, and that's when it becomes negative 0.0625. If you put the 0 or not, that's okay. And then negative, okay, for this one, y is equals to negative from the equation up there, negative 1 to the fourth power. We bring down the negative in here, and so negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1, times negative 1 is negative 1, times negative 1 is positive 1, so negative 1. And in here it's going to be the same thing, negative from the outside, and negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2, positive 16. This negative is just from the sign outside. So we're ready to graph. 2, negative 16, 2, negative 16 is somewhere around here. 1, negative 1, 1, negative 1 is right there. 0.5, negative 0.06, so around there, very close. 0, 0. Negative 0.5, negative 0.0625, so around there. And negative 2, oh, negative 1, negative 1, and negative 2, negative 16. So again, look at my graph. Again, we were right. It's negative with even. So negative leading coefficient with even. Even tells me both hands will be lifted. or pointing down, both even, pointing on the same direction. If it's positive, both will be pointing up. If it's negative, both will be pointing down. So many of you already know the conclusion. If you want, you can go ahead and forward this video. At the end of this video, we'll summarize our observations. So if you wish, you can go ahead and forward. I'm going to give now y equals x to the fifth, both positive and negative, and y equals x to the sixth power. With that, after that, we'll do the summary. So skip it if you need to. Okay, so again, y equals x to the fifth power. It just means 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which is 32. Again, if you want to use your calculator, it will be 2 raised to the fifth power. And press equal, that's 32. Okay, so it's this button right here, y to the x power. And for some other ones, that arrow right there. 1 times 1 times 1 times 1, it doesn't matter how many ones you have when you're multiplying 1 times itself. A lot of times it's just 1. 0 times 0 times 0, same thing for 0. Now in here, you have negative, so y equals negative 1 to the fifth power. And so it means negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1. And so remember that each pair will make it positive, but then there is a lonely one that makes it negative again. So negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1, and positive 1 times positive 1 is positive 1, but then bring down this negative 1, and that makes it negative 1. Same for the negative 2. Negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 is negative 32. And of course, we're not going to have enough points in here. We're not going to be able to graph this one, so it's just a very rough sketch. 0, 0, we're able to graph. 1, 1, we're able to graph. Negative 1, negative 1, negative 1, negative 1. But then we have 232. 232, it's 3 times this many and 2 more squares, because that's 10 right there. So somewhere up there. Okay, so it's growing super fast. And on this direction, same thing. It's growing super fast. Okay, so since we don't have those other points, I'm just gonna draw the arrow. Now, how does it look on Desmos? I'll take away this one. And so I'm just going to put y equals x, a to the b power, and put the 5. And look at how that looks. Oh, and that actually I should be comparing it not to the quadratic, but to the third power. The green is the one that we have right now. Again, look how at some point they cross. So the fifth power, it grows very slowly, very close to the x-axis. It grows very slowly, slower than x cubed, but then there's a point where, because the power is higher, it grows faster. What is that point? It's a 1, 1. Surprise, surprise. What matters? What matters is that this has a positive leading coefficient. The degree is odd. And so we know that when it's odd, one hand goes up, one hand goes down. When it's positive, it always turns. I think of this as the positive slope. It will always be positive. Going from left to right, you go up. Up. Okay, so I relate it that way to the slope, but it's up to you how you want to see it. So when this is positive, you always point down on the left and point up on the right. Okay, for the next one, we can guess that the only thing that is going to change is because it's odd, one is going to be up and one down. Because it's negative, it's going to go, the slope is going to go down. Okay, so think about that. But let's do it. So y is equals to negative from the equation. We substitute 2 to the 5th power. And remember that we do this exponent first. And so 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is 32. But because of that negative, we bring it down. 2 to the 5th power is 32. So negative 32. So if you can think about it, basically all it's doing is changing the signs. If you want, you can pause the video and do this work. But again, for this one, you have negative from the equation, and then 1 to the 5th power is just 1. For 0, negative 0 to the 5th power is just 0. Remember, 0 is neutral. Negative 1, you have negative from the equation. Let me do that one. Negative from the equation. Negative 1 to substitute x, because it's negative, we put it between parentheses to the 5th power. Bring down the negative from there. Negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1, because it's 5 of them, you don't have even numbers, so there's one lonely that makes a negative 1. We multiply those negatives and becomes negative times negative becomes the big plus. And so you just have 1. Okay, and the same thing is going to happen to 2, so it's going to be positive 32. Why? Again, because we have a negative in here, and when we erase a negative number to an odd, it becomes negative, and negative times negative becomes positive. Okay, now we have 0, 0, 1, negative 1, 2, negative 2, way up there, we can't see it. And then negative 1, positive 1, negative 2, way up there. So again, we can't really see that, but we know that after 1, it goes super fast. So fast that we can't even graph some of those points. Okay. Very rough sketch, because it should be skinnier right here. Okay, so again, what matters is that we have a negative leading coefficient, and this is odd. The odd tells me that 1 is up and 1 down. But again, negative, I just think of the negative line, negative slope. So negative. If you can see that relationship, if it's positive, positive slope. Between any of these, between any 2 points in this graph, you will have a positive slope. Okay, negative slope, negative. And so that means that on the left, it's pointing up. On the right, it's pointing down. Okay, odd, 1 up and 1 down. If it's negative, it's going to go like this. Okay, if it's positive, 1 down, 1 up. But the one on the left is pointing down. Let me put, the positive is the green one. Now let's put y equals negative x to the 5th power. There it is. Again, it looks a little flat in here because when you multiply decimals, you can try multiplying different decimals like 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, and you'll see that it grows very slowly. But then after 1, it grows super, super fast. Okay. Okay, for this one, you have y equals x to the 6th power. It means 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So that will be 64. If you need to check, 2 to the 6th power is 64. And negative 1 to the 6th power, let me do that one. Y equals negative 6 to the 6th, negative 1 to the 6th power means negative 1 times 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 negative 1. And remember, because each pair multiply the signs, negative times negative becomes positive 1 times in here again, -1 times -1 is +1. In here again, +1. So 1 times 1 times 1 is just +1. The same thing will be for -2 to the 6th power. And so because it's also 6 of them, the sign will cancel to be positive, and it's going to be 64. So again, in here we can only graph 0, 0, and 1, 1, and -1, +1, because for 2 it will be 64. We need 6 and 4 squares of these ones to be able to graph the next one. So if you notice, it grows very slowly in here. If we were to graph it the way it is in there, and then it grows super fast. Like it's a little flatter in here, and it grows super fast after the 1, okay? Let me show you y equals x to the 6th power. Again, notice how the growth is very tiny in here, but then after 1, it shoots up. We can see it here, right there. That's how it looks. And so it's flat in here because it grows very slowly with the decimals, but then after 1 it grows super fast. Okay, so let's analyze it. Positive, even tells me that both are going to point at to the same place. If it's positive, both up. If it's negative, both will point, you guessed it right, down. Okay, so on the left, it points up. On the right, it points up as well. And we can already conclude that because this is negative and this is even tells me both hands rise or both hands go down. Because of the negative, both are going to point down on the left and on the right. So 2 to the 6th power is 64, but we have that negative in there, so it's just going to be -64. 1 to the 6th power, remember the exponent is first, is 1, but the negative of the equation is -1. 0 is just neutral. And the -1 to the 6th power, we already saw that it becomes +1, but because of that negative that we just bring down is -1. And then -2 to the 6th power, similar to this, it becomes +64, but because of that negative, we bring down the negative, -64. Again, we have 0, 0, 1, -1, 2, -64. We cannot see it. Same on the other side, -1, -1. And -2 is -64, but we cannot really see it because it goes super fast. And again, in here, actually should be a little flat. Okay, but what matters again for now is what is the end behavior. Okay, to the summary now. So what I will be doing is including each one of these sketches as best as I can, and then I'll show them to you all at once. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to start with odd here, and I'm going to have the leading coefficient positive or negative. And then I'll do the even, and same, positive or negative. Okay, so for the odd, we have positive coefficients. When we had y equals x, we had this type of graph right there. We also had y equals x cubed. Cubed is odd. The graph was something like this. And we also had y equals x to the 5th power, which was also similar to that, but flatter in here, and then it grows super fast. Okay? So have that in mind. So we can say that for odd and positive, we always had going down on the left and going up on the right. Okay? Now, what if it was odd, but it had a negative leading coefficient? Well, we had y equals negative x. My line went down that way. We had y equals negative x cubed. And so it starts something like this. And we had y equals negative x to the 5th power. Negative leading coefficient, odd degree. And it was similar to this one, but it grew super fast and very flat in here, okay? Again, what we care about is the end behavior. What is the end behavior? It's up on the left and down on the right. Let me see if I can make it smaller. Okay, so that's for the odd. It's always one hand pointing down and one up. But if that's because of the odd. One up and one down. If it's positive, it's kind of like a positive slope between any 2 points. If it's negative leading coefficient, negative slope between any 2 points. Now let's do the even. We had y equals x squared. The graph is something like this. We had y equals x to the 4th. It was similar but flatter in here and then growing fast. Whoops. And we had y equals x to the 6th power. Very similar but growing even faster. So what's happening when it's positive if it's even, both hands will go on the same direction. The leading coefficient is positive, so both will point up. Okay, so both pointing up. If the leading coefficient is negative, again, even. With even, you have negative x squared. It went down. Y equals negative x to the 4th. It went down as well, but flattering here a little bit. And y equals negative x to the 6th. Very similar, but growing a lot faster because it's a higher degree, so that makes it grow faster. Okay, so remember the even makes both hands go in the same direction. With the negative leading coefficient means that both of them will go or point down, actually, point down. So this is the summary of this whole long video. And I know you're hating me right now for not giving you this at the beginning instead. But I love all human beings as I love math. So even if you hate me, if you can please give us a thumbs up, subscribe around here. This is the list to the entire unit. This is the video to the next lesson. Now you're able to do 7.1 and have fun.